Hello and welcome to yet another session from Hindu Academy. My name is Nishit Kotak. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Wherever you're watching around the world from, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So if you're new to the broadcast, welcome. Let me just give you a quick rundown on how this session will run. We have a Q&A session that lasts for about 50 minutes, runs from about 2 o'clock to about 2:50, and we close around 2:55. The way we do this broadcast is we have a focus topic. The focus topic for today is going to be, why do Hindus worship idols? So I would like you to look at this video that I'm going to share very shortly, then come back with your questions and your comments in the Facebook page where you're watching us from, or on the YouTube page where you're watching us from either. In any case, I welcome you wherever you're watching around the world from. And let's get started with today's focus topic video, and I will see you shortly after this video finishes.
I mean, the Abrahamic tradition have a habit of challenging Hindus with the following two major challenges. They say, first of all, you are a polytheist tradition, means belief in lots of ultimate realities, gods, all these colorful gods and goddesses. That means it's contradictory to common sense. You can't have more than one. So the first time they say, you are a polytheist tradition, many gods. And Hindus say, we have all the Shiva and Vishnu, all that. In reality, we have never been a polytheist tradition. We have always been a very mature, very grand, very well thought out, very structured, pluralistic tradition. I've been rubbing this in fact, I did a session at the Parliament, in British Parliament a couple of weeks back, and I said, this is the main thing that you have to adopt from Hinduism. Many ways to be spiritual, many ways to think of ultimate reality. It's called pluralism. If all other religions adopt this idea, then the fighting in the name of religion will stop immediately, because they say, oh, this is my way of thinking about ultimate reality. This is Mr. Lakhani's way of thinking ultimate reality. So be it. Why do you want to fight and thump each other for no reason? So the central feature of our tradition is pluralism. So what appears as a weakness, polytheism, is in fact a grand idea suited to the societies of today, so that people of different religions can coexist honestly and with full love and dedication to their own tradition without thumping each other. Pluralism, not polytheism. That's the first challenge. The second challenge I get, and I am tired of it, but I still have to handle it, is that you are idolatrous. And even the Jews, they hate the word idolatry. They say, in fact, if you got a Jew and you say you want to take him to a temple with all these images, he won't come in. I'm telling you, you'll be surprised. The Muslim might come in, but the Jew won't come in, saying, no, thou shalt not create graven images of thy God, says our tradition. So I'm not going to come in. I got this experience. I was surprised. Very intellectual, intelligent Jewish personality, academic, wasn't prepared to enter a temple. I said, fair enough. What's going on? You see, the Hindu tradition is very magnanimous. It says, in order to engage with spirituality, use every tool that is possible, including the idea of giving form, name and form to the idea of ultimate reality, different names and forms, not many gods, many ways to think of ultimate reality, giving different names and forms to the same ultimate reality, pluralism, not stopping there, going a stage further and saying, why don't we also be magnanimous and give it form? Why are we so frightened of giving form? Because we all have form. Let's think of ultimate reality also with a form. We are not apologizing for it at all. This is the way we relate to ultimate reality, spirituality, saying, give it name and form, different names and form, same ultimate, but different names and form. So we allow the idea that you can give form to the ultimate reality. This is called Saguna Sakara Ishwar, with qualities and with attributes and with form. We allow for it. So we say, now let's create all this kind of lovely, colorful imagery. What's wrong with it? We all use this. In order to relate to subtle ideas, you require some kind of figure or some kind of imagery or some kind of symbolism. You can't do without it. And then people say, Mr. Lakhani, is not true. You shouldn't convert into this great infinite God, cannot be reduced to this finite form. It's infinite. You can't do this. It's horrible. I said, no, it's not horrible. I said, in every field, we have this idea of trying to relate to subtle ideas using some kind of symbolism. In every field, including mathematics. You can't do your mathematics without using symbols X, Y, Z. They have no meaning. They have no reality. Yet you use them to manipulate, and I come to understanding subtle ideas using X, Y, Z. And the most important symbol in mathematics, infinite. It's infinite. And you say, oh, no, Mr. Lakhani, you put a little twiddle on the blackboard, say, that's infinite. That's not infinite. That's a symbol you create to relate to the idea of infinite. You use it in mathematics without any hassle. Without it, you can't do mathematics. And yet, when Hindus say you want to give form to God, you say, no, you can't do it. It's infinite. Infinite has got to be given a symbol. So why can't we think of ultimate reality as with this colorful imagery? We love it. We are not apologizing for it whatsoever. It's a better way of engaging with spirituality because you give it form. You can love a personality rather than say, oh, subtle principle, So this is why we are not apologizing for it. So if somebody uses, be careful. If somebody uses the word idol, run away from it straight away. Idol means you are worshipping objects. We never do that. Ask any Hindu who's gone to a temple, did you say, oh, marble, we love you? They say, no way. You say, oh, ultimate real God, we love you. See, we are not worshipping objects. That's called idolatry. We can say we use images and if you like symbols to relate to the ultimate reality. They are called pratik and pratima from the root prati. Going towards spirituality using pratik, symbols, or pratima, imagery. We are not apologizing. In fact, the word we use for the images we use in temple is called murti. Murti is a beautiful word. It says giving a material status to spirit. See, we are very clear about it. Giving a material form to the spirit, which is very subtle, but we give it a material murti, murta. So we give it a material form. See how powerful and well thought out your tradition is. So if anybody challenges you with polytheism or idolatry, fire back as I did.
Free e-learning course in Hinduism. To register, please visit www.hindu-academy.com.
Talks on Hinduism, sponsored by People Care, encouraging caring for the elderly in their own homes. For more information, please visit peoplecare.com.
Amazing. So we have such a nice topic to explore today. And to help me do that, I've got Manish Bhai and Sita Ben, and I will ask Manish Bhai to join me. In fact, we can just do this on a gallery view. There we go. Fabulous. So Manish Bhai, we have such an interesting topic today. We're looking at the topic of monotheism. We're looking at polytheism. We're looking at pluralism. We're looking at atheism. There's so many ways of, looking at this journey that we call life. And everybody can fit into one or more slots. But for us Hindus, we believe in pluralism. So let's explore this topic and how it measures up against the other sort of thoughts on this subject. So over to you, Manish Bhai.
Thank you, Nishit Bhai. Welcome viewers to today's live Q&A session. We have Sita Ben here going to answer your questions. But first of all, let's discuss today's topic, pluralism, and then there is this topic of idol worship. So looking at pluralism, are Hindu, some people think Hindus are polytheists. Are we polytheists or are we pluralists, Sita Ben?
Yeah, that's a very easy question to answer. We're obviously pluralistic, and my dad has produced a number of videos explaining pluralism, that there are many different ways of approaching the same one spirit. And we have to make sure that we don't get confused because we loosely translate all of these different forms of gods into God. So it gives the impression that there are loads and loads of gods. And then it seems like a real contradiction in terms, because if God is ultimate, how can there be 330 million ultimates? It doesn't make any sense. So by sort of clarifying it, by saying that there is one ultimate and there are many different ways of approaching that one ultimate, it makes so much more sense, and it's much more philosophically sound as well. And possibly a reason for the sort of confusion is that the term sort of, for all these forms of deities is called devas, and devas means shining ones. So it's very easy to translate that into gods, when really what we are saying is these are different ways of approaching the same one God. And Hinduism is really spoilt for choice. We've got more gods than human population. There's so many, as many people, that many different versions of God. And in that way, we can build a very close relationship with that particular form of God. So you can see God as your mother, your father, even your child, your friend, your sweetheart. Any sort of human relationship, you can sort of superimpose that onto God. because otherwise it's very difficult to sort of cultivate so much love for a being that you cannot see. So by giving God a form and sort of relating to that form as your mother or your father or your child, you can develop such a sweet relationship with God and become more spiritual by nature. So we really recognize the benefit of that.
Wonderful answer, Sitaben. As Sitaben said, we are pluralist by nature, and even our scriptures, Rig Veda says Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. We have been saying from ancient times that truth or God is one, but many different people approach it in their own different ways, and that is allowed and perfectly fine in Hinduism. And even Tulsidas, one of the chopais, Hari Ananta, Hari Katha Ananta, Kahi Sunai Bahubidhi Sabasanta. So saying similar thing in Awadhi language. So there you go. We've got wonderful scriptures which are establishing this fact as well. We come to idol worship, Sitaben. What is idol? And what is idol worship? Do Hindus worship idols?
Obviously, no, we do not worship that piece of marble or stone or that particular picture. We are not worshipping that material form. What we are doing is we are giving a sort of a form, and we're using that as a tool to reach out to the infinite, because by sort of, giving that sort of God a form, we are able to sort of make God a bit more tangible for us. It's due to our sort of human limitations that we are having to then sort of capture God in a particular form so that we can build a relationship of love with that particular form of God. So we are not using images, as a way of worshipping marble or stone or rock or whatever it is. We are reaching out to the ultimate through that particular form. And as Dad said in the video, Murthy is sort of giving a material form to the ultimate, to the infinite. And that's ultimately what this whole process is about, is we're using tools from our sort of limited human frame. We're trying to reach out to the infinite. So we have to use finite tools to reach out to the infinite. And using all of these different forms of deities is the way that we can do that.
In fact, this is just one aspect of Hinduism, which we are talking about God with a form. There's also God without form. There is other ways of being spiritual without looking at God with a form. So, Hinduism is not necessarily only about God with a form or having so many gods that we are so infamously known for. But like we had a comment from Juts for YouTube saying that, many years ago, that the idea or the ability of putting down the way you can relate to God in the form of a sculpture or a painting helps people to focus their mind. And it's not about the actual physical object, but it's the thought behind it. And so that's very well put as well, yes.
Thank you, Nisit Bhai. So, Sitaben, you used the wonderful word murti. What is murti? And how do use of murti help with making spiritual progress?
So murti is something that you use to sort of focus your mind. And as Nishit Bhai was also saying, using these different forms of deities and gods is just one pathway within Hinduism. There are other pathways, non-theistic pathways. And what all of these pathways are ultimately aiming to do is focusing our mind to get a clearer vision of reality. So even if you sit down to meditate, you might choose to focus your mind on a particular mantra. You might want to focus on the Om or, the Gayatri mantra, whatever it is. You're using something to focus your mind. And these murtis or these images are ways that we can focus our mind on a particular form on God, essentially. And even then we sort of extend it even further. So we say, you don't even need to use a form of God. Suppose you love art and you feel engrossed in art. That is also reaching the same conclusion because you are focusing your mind and becoming super conscious in that state. It's called Ati-Chetan. You're becoming super conscious in that state. So you can use a murti, you can focus on a mantra, you can focus on a particular prayer, you can focus on any discipline like art or music. Just become so immersed in it that you reach that state of heightened awareness. And that's really what spiritual living is all about. And you see this, it's all becoming very sort of trendy and popular these days, this idea of becoming mindful. So that's also the same sort of approach. We are using mindfulness to sort of make sure you do everything properly, make sure you're really conscious of everything you are doing. And by doing that, you reach that super conscious state. So these murtis, whatever discipline you use, are ultimately going towards the same destination.
Wonderful answer, Sitaben. So some Hindus tend to use the word idol. Should we be using word idol, or should we be using murti or pratima?
That's right. That's essentially what it is. It's a sort of mistranslation from the Sanskrit, which causes these kinds of confusion. Like we were saying previously, with all these forms of gods are then called gods. It creates the confusion that we've got so many gods within Hinduism. And similarly, murti is translated into idol, and then it looks like we are worshipping idols. So it again creates the wrong impression about Hinduism. So that's really what our job is as Hindu Academy, is to just clarify what Hinduism is really all about.
Wonderful answer, Sitaben. So Dhananjay Unde says, often images of Hindu gods are referred to as idols or statues. However, it is important to understand that these are manifestations of cosmic principles. Ganesh symbolizes the cosmic principle of intelligence and wisdom. Praying to Ganesh is a means to inculcate this principle in our minds and in our lives. May we all be wise, and may we all be truthful, may we all be happy. Any comments on that, Sitaben?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, essentially. So we're using whatever we can sort of reach out to reach the infinite. So whatever tool it is. And even as Dad was saying in the video, it reminds me that, all these symbols that we use in mathematics, like Dad was saying, this infinite symbol, that is not infinite. So in the same way, we are saying, yes, this little symbol or this little picture, we're not saying that that's God. That's the way that we can relate to God. That's the way that we can link to the infinite, which is indescribable, or, it has no form. So this is the way that we can make sense of reality.
Wonderful answer, Sitaben. So, in Middle Ages and recent times, we've seen Abrahamic influence especially North India, and how Hinduism came from all attacks from these religions. And if you look at the influence, the Sikhism came about, there is no image in that. And there is two Hindu movements called Arya Samaj and Brahmo Samaj. Both of them virtually abandoned worship of murtis, say Murti Puja. But what happened? How come these movements did not get that popularity, and we are still building temples, building images, and even though many of our temples were destroyed, or maybe gets destroyed by time, why are we so focused on Murti Puja, Sitaben?
Yeah, so as you said, both of these movements sort of sprang up from within Hinduism to focus on this idea of God with form, God without form, but with quality. So Sagun Nirakar, this idea of sort of focusing on love or truth or compassion, choosing one of these sort of human ideals and sort of making your life, that's what your life is all about. But I think there is just something within the Hindu psyche that we just love our deity so much. It's just ingrained within our system for thousands of years. And we've got so many wonderful saints and prophets who have actually become God realized through worshipping that particular form of God, whether it be, Mirabai, Tulsidas, Tukaram. We've got amazing saints throughout the ages who have related to God with form and been successful in that particular way. And I think it's very difficult to let go of that sort of human contact, that human relationship that we have sort of developed with God, because, in a way it suddenly becomes very impersonal and you feel a bit lost. Sort of, when you have your image of Krishna or something, you've got that focus every morning. You go there and you meditate, you do your puja in front of it. Whereas with, thinking of God as love or compassion or whatever, it is very lovely, but it's much more difficult to have a tangible sort of practice around it. So that's possibly the reason why we are very much attached to the idea of God with form. But having said that, I do think that times are changing dramatically at the moment. And I think especially the younger generations, they're not able to relate so much to God with form because, they're taught to question everything through the education system. Why is there suffering? Why is there so much pain in the world? And when you have a God with form, it comes with a tremendous amount of baggage, because God with form is surely not good enough, because he's either not all powerful, otherwise he would be able to make everyone happy all the time, or he's not all compassionate. Is he a cruel God? So it comes with so much baggage that nowadays I think we are sort of transitioning into more of the idea of non-theistic Hinduism, where we like to see spirit percolating through everything, through matter. So that's hopefully the way things are going. But we do have this attachment to God with form as well.
Well, speaking about God with form, we have two people here who asked an interesting question. So we've got Infected, who's asking, where does the image of the idol actually come from? Was it rishis who saw them during meditation, or were they created by us ordinary folk? And Jux for YouTube is also asking a similar thing. He says, how were the images standardized? Because everybody could envision the same Ganesh in a different way. How was it standardized?
Oh, it's a really interesting question. I think, possibly the reason why certain deities have sort of over the years become sort of, standardized, as you say, is it's because we know that these are tried and tested ways that people have actually found God. So we know that Krishna works as a pathway to God. We know that worshipping Ram or Hanuman or Ganesh, we know that they are tried and tested methods. So I guess, initially, probably, the rishis, they would see sort of, not necessarily a God with form. Maybe they saw, God percolating as the universe, as Atman or Brahman. But as Hinduism continued to evolve, this idea of God with form became much more prominent. So yes, it's very, very possible that over thousands of years, people would have had their own version of, God, which we would have absolutely no idea of, because they would have sort of merged into the absolute. And we have no idea how they sort of perceive that particular form of God. But possibly it's because of all the saints and prophets who throughout the ages have said, yes, look, this has worked for me. This is a tried and tested way. So then people are like, oh, okay, let me put that particular image of God in my home. Let me worship this particular form of God. So possibly, who knows, if this is true, but I'm just speculating that possibly that's how, because people are like, oh, that one worked. Let me use that one. Let me use that one. And that's how it possibly became a bit more standardized.
Yeah, I suppose if you consider that there was no photography, there was no writing even as such, it was not easily accessible. There was no, obviously, live streaming like we are doing now. And the distances across India at that time was a large sort of area. And so I suppose that you're right that, it was all passed down orally. And then you had maybe some of these spiritual leaders crisscrossing the country. And over a period of time, it became accepted as they were in a position of leadership to push this vision across. Amazing. Manish Bhai, over to you.
Thank you, Nishat Bhai. So, Sita Ben, we see Hindus commonly using Murti Puja. And do we have, you talked about saints and rishis, do we have any examples of someone having God experience using murtis?
Yes, the most obvious one is, because I've grown up with this tradition, is Sri Ramakrishna. So he lived so recently, literally 100 years ago, and he was successful in his particular pathway. And he had a great love for the mother goddess Kali. And in a way, it's very nice that he was able to show success in this particular pathway, because Kali's form is extremely fierce and it's very frightening looking. So he was able to show that he was able to be successful in a pathway which, the mother goddess looks very fierce and sort of quite daunting. And it's amazing when you sort of read his life story, how he was able to see the mother goddess so clearly, much more clearly than we can see reality at the moment. So that's what we were talking about previously. It's sort of all of our endeavors are trying to reach that state of super consciousness. And through this particular form of God, he was able to reach that state of super consciousness. And he was so amazed because that living, breathing goddess is right in front of him. I can't even begin to imagine what that would be like. And he would, go around around her and say, "Where is your shadow, Mother Goddess?" And she says, "I'm the one who's lighting up the whole universe, so how can I have a shadow?" So he has these amazing dialogues with the Mother Goddess. And we just hope that one day we'll be lucky enough to experience that for ourselves.
Wonderful answer, Sita Ben. It's wonderful to hear about Sri Ramakrishna and his experiences. But one of his chief disciples, Swami Vivekananda, he was so skeptical about him worshipping Mother Goddess. And what happened? How did he accept image worship and worshipping of Mother Goddess? Sita Ben?
Well, I mean, I think when he first sort of came into contact with Sri Ramakrishna, he was, of course, very skeptical because he had gone around to so many sort of so-called leaders of religion at the time, and he was not satisfied at all with any of the answers that they were providing. And the standard question he would ask is, "Have you seen God, sir? Have you seen God?" And for the first time with Sri Ramakrishna, he was able to get a straightforward, "Yes, I have seen God. Not only can I see God, but I can see him more clearly than I can see you." And for Vivekananda, that must have been, very refreshing. It must have been extremely sort of enlightening that there is actually somebody out there who can actually prove the existence of an ultimate reality. And I think Sri Ramakrishna also touched him, and he sort of went into this sort of amazing super conscious state. So, right from the beginning, he hit the jackpot, which is this idea of Advait, this idea of seeing everything as spirit. But then he was also skeptical about this idea of the Mother Goddess. And I remember a time where Swami Vivekananda was going through a very difficult time financially. He was having to look after his family. And he was in poverty, essentially. So he would go to Sri Ramakrishna for help. And Sri Ramakrishna says, "Go to my mother, the Mother Goddess." So Vivekananda would go to the temple of the Mother Goddess, and he thinks, "Oh, I'm just doing this for the sake of it, not because I believe in anything like this." But then he would actually go to the form of the Mother Goddess, but not see the Murti, which we're all talking about, but the actual Mother Goddess, which would be an absolutely awe-inspiring, indescribable experience. And when he comes across face to face the image of the Mother Goddess, how can you ask for something so petty as money? When we're living in the material world, money is just everything, and you can't survive without it. But when you are in the presence of that divinity, everything just completely drops away. So, he was able to sort of see the Mother Goddess and understand Sri Ramakrishna's perspective and his devotion to the Mother Goddess.
Wonderful answer. Wonderful to hear about Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramhans. But we do have had other saints and people who worshipped, did Murti Puja and were able to relate to idea of God through them. One prime example is Mirabai. When she was a child, she was given Murti of Krishna and say, she was seeing a wedding and she said, "Who is my husband?" And someone said, "This is your husband, Krishna." And from that day on, she related to Krishna as her husband and was able to make spiritual progress in that manner. And we have many examples like that. We have Tulsidas, Narsimha Mehta, and this great bhakti movement took around all over India, where people were making wonderful spiritual progress using Murti Puja. So we are not apologetic about that at all, and we love the idea. And I don't see it stopping at any point. And may it carry on as long as people are making spiritual progress. That's what matters at the end. So Arshdeep Singh is asking an interesting question in that manner. He's saying how devotion and surrendering towards a deity can increase spiritual progress for an individual.
Yes, so this is the wonderful thing, is that you just sort of focus your attention so much on that particular form of God, And throughout the day, whenever you get a chance, please, continue sort of chanting the name of God that you love and just remembering that form of God. And as Sharda Devi also said, constant remembrance of God sort of heightens or brings that spiritual awakening, just in the same way as handling a flower constantly. And then when you smell your hand, you get the sweet fragrance of that flower. So constant remembrance of God draws you towards spirituality. And another thing that you can also bring into this idea is what the Bhagavad Gita talks about in terms of karma yoga. So you go about all your duties, but make sure that you offer the fruit of all of your actions to God, including all the sort of prayers and worship that you're doing. It's very important to not sort of make it ego-centered, but make everything God-centered. So, if you've got that particular form of God in your mind throughout the day, whatever activities you're doing, and just being humble about all you are doing, that's essentially spiritual living.
Amazing. So we have one of the viewers online today. We've got Shruti Chauhan, who coincidentally happens to be one of my friends from Nairobi. It's lovely to see her on the call for the very first time. So welcome, Shruti. And she just made a really interesting observation. She says, there is a fine line of a balance between being spiritual and being religious. She says there's so many divided thoughts on this, because you say, for example, Vishnu incarnated as Krishna or Ram or any other avatar, then why does it feel that you have to choose one over the other as being superior? Should we not just rise up above the religious divide and just work towards being spiritual, which is the main goal? So great thoughts there, Shruti. Well done. And there was another question here, which is about the deities. Why do some of these deities have animal features like Ganesh or Hayagriva or Hanuman or Narasimha, etc.? What's the symbolism behind it?
So that's a really good question, because especially for outsiders to Hinduism, when they look at all of these images, especially, for example, Ganesh, he's got an elephant head, Hanuman is a monkey, and they think, what kind of a religion is this? Are we sort of promoting animal behavior? What is this all about? But ultimately, we have to remember that we are not sort of here to promote worshipping animals or anything like that. What we are recognizing is that the whole living kingdom is divine, and we are elevating the animal kingdom to the level of the divine by incorporating animals and animal imagery within our forms of gods and goddesses. So a lot of the deities, they've got a vehicle. For example, Shiva's got Nandi, Vishnu's got the eagle. They're all these sort of images of gods and goddesses incorporate animals, because we recognize the significance and importance of the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom isn't here just for us to, as Dad would say, crunch and munch on. They are part of the living kingdom. They are part of, the spirit percolating as everything. So we have to make sure they are not forgotten.
Fantastic. I have one more question. This is from Ritik Pandit. This is not about idealism, but we are now going to slowly start switching over to general questions. The question is, can a person attain moksha or mukti even if they go to, say, Nark is the equivalent? We don't have a hell. He understands that there's no concept of eternal hell or heaven, but we have a temporary abode and then you're reborn afterwards. But in that journey, can somebody attain moksha from there?
The thing is, what people say is that the place where you gain this sort of enlightenment and knowledge is while you're living your human life. That's the sort of ultimate. This is where you do your work. All the sort of stages in between lives are sort of fuzzy, dreamlike states. And they're a nice place to sort of go and relax for a bit, I guess, in between lives, because you're not having to deal with all the sort of physical sufferings of day-to-day living. But ultimately, you have to come back to a human form, living the life that we are living now, in order to sort of make that spiritual progress. Yes, you do sort of hear of, these sort of states of mind, essentially, which is what they are, where it's sort of hellish or heaven-like, depending on what you have done in your life, what kind of character you have built up for yourself. For example, if you've been a mass murderer, I don't think you're going to be particularly happy after you pass away. So this is the thing, you create your own sort of dreamlike state, but you have to remember that you must ultimately come back to a human life in order to make that spiritual progress and achieve moksha.
Amazing. So what I'd like to do at this point is we've got a lot of new viewers today. So I think it's the right time for me to do a short rapid fire Q&A session. I'm going to ask both Manish Bhai and Sitaben to help me out with this. Now, humanity's most profound faith is a global phenomenon right now. Students, teachers, neighbors, friends, they're all full of questions and there's lots of misconceptions. They're rampant. And here are some questions I've got for you to maybe set things a little bit clearly and get us off onto a nice start to Hinduism and understanding the basics of Hinduism. Now, number one, now contrary to prevailing misconceptions as we discussed today, Hindus all worship one supreme being, although they choose to do it with different representations, I would say. So why does Hinduism have so many gods? That's question one. Sitaben, for you.
Yes, so as many people, that many different ways of looking at God, essentially, because we've all got very, very different starting points and we have to sort of follow our heart, essentially. So we are very lucky within Hinduism that we've got such a vast variety of different forms of gods and goddesses that you can pick and choose. You can say, I love the Mother Goddess, I love Krishna, whoever it is that you like, because we are all different. We all need different sort of prescriptions to reach the ultimate.
Amazing. So, Manish Bhai, for you, the next question. So, carnate means in the flesh. Reincarnate means to re-enter the flesh. Now, obviously, Hindus believe in reincarnation, but why is it so? As Manish Bhai's connection dropped.
Oh,
I think so. I think it's frozen. Sitaben, you want to have a go at this? Why do Hindus believe in reincarnation?
So for Hindus, ultimately, we recognize that this life doesn't end in a full stop. It's just a comma. It's a breather in between lives. And this idea of reincarnation is so sort of embedded within Hinduism and within Hindu philosophy that it's actually considered to be one of the beliefs that you must have in order to be a Hindu. And yeah, this is the thing, is that it's so important to recognize that it gives us perspective on life, essentially, because you recognize that death is not the end. You do have a chance to carry on, and all the sort of good work or effort that you've put into this life does not go to waste. And ultimately, you are in charge of your own destiny, because you yourself have to get to that destination of moksha yourself. So reincarnation provides many opportunities for us to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I understand that we believe at death, the soul leaves the physical body, but the soul doesn't die itself. It keeps on living in what we call maybe an astral plane, which is similar to where we go when we sleep. We're not really dead, but we're not there. So I believe that the idea is that after the soul is reincarnated over a number of lifetimes, following right dharma, it is fully matured, and then it realizes moksha. Amazing. Manish Bhai, good to have you back. Now, a question for you is, karma is one of the natural laws of the mind, just like gravity is a law of matter, right? So what exactly is it? It's a very tough thing for some people to wrap their heads around, and some people take it very simplistically. Would you mind elaborating a little bit?
Thank you. My internet is unstable, so in case I drop out, please bear with me. So law of karma is basically law of cause and effect. What we say is whatever we do has an effect, but so any one thing behind it, or even say for a lamp to be here, someone has to have made it and the material has to come from somewhere. So there is what you call many reasons for a thing to happen. And what we are saying is things are interlinked, and for certain good thing to happen, so you need to do some good things. And I think that is basically law of karma in principle. And even for bad thing to happen, as again, there are many reasons. So it's quite a complex phenomena of cause and effect, and in a way things are intertwined. That's all we're saying.
It is very deep indeed, and I would urge anybody to go and explore this a little further, and it's not as simple as it looks. So, Sitaben, another question for you, which is, we have one of the biggest changes to human life, which is what we call settlement. Before, humans were hunter-gatherers, and you had to, find your food for the day, move around, etc. We couldn't settle in one place. But one animal in particular helped change this out and had the biggest impact on humanity, which is the humble cow. It is the giver of sustenance for us and allowed us to settle down, allowed us to do farming, fed us, sustained us, gave us, lots of different things. Now, why do Hindus worship the cow? Do we worship it or do we respect it?
This is the thing. We're not out there to worship animals, as we said previously. What we are doing is we are recognizing the sacred nature of every living thing, including the animal kingdom, but especially so the cow, because it's thanks to the cow that, as you were saying, Nishit, we were able to settle down. Because without that, we were just literally running around, rummaging around for food and not able to focus on any kind of spiritual living, essentially. So by having, a cow, we're able to get the milk, we're able to get so many resources, we're able to develop crops, we're able to do so many wonderful things as a result. And they've been a great sort of friend to humanity for so many thousands of years. And they're such a gentle animal. They're not like a tiger. They're not going to come and bite you if you take their milk. So yes, this is why the cow is really revered. But nowadays, it's also becoming very clear that all this sort of commercialization of dairy is really causing a big problem, and we're causing a great deal of suffering to the animal kingdom as a result. So we have to be very careful that, we don't sort of overstep the boundary, make sure we are aware of the sort of suffering that the animal kingdom is going through.
Amazing. So I have one question which I'm going to ask, and I'm going to answer it myself as well, because I want to be part of this Q&A. And the question is, are Hindus idol worshippers? So as we've discussed amply today, Hindus don't worship a stone or a metal idol as a god. We worship God through the image, and we invoke the presence of God from higher or unseen worlds into that image, so that we can commune with him and receive his blessings. So there we go. I've answered my own question. But Manish Bhai, for you, here is an interesting question. A lot of people ask, are Hindus forbidden to eat meat? Or the flip side is, are all Hindus vegetarian?
So Hindus, not all Hindus are vegetarians. Many Hindus do eat meat, but they avoid cow meat, beef. So there is we are not, fixated on scriptures, and the Hindu, the scriptures are just advisory. They're not saying you must do this or that. So many Hindus, those who like eating meat, they do eat meat, and nothing to stop them. And but vegetarian diet is preferred, and it is suggested that it helps with spiritual progress, but not all Hindus are meat eaters or vegetarian.
Fabulous. I think there is a movement globally towards vegetarianism, and now even more so towards veganism and so on, so that you don't, like Sitaben said, the animal industry goes through a lot of pressure and stress and strain, and there's no need to subject animals to these kind of stresses if we don't have to. So Sitaben, I have a question for you. Many of the mainstream religions, they have a sacred text or a book, like the Bible, for example, or the Quran. Do Hindus have a Bible?
So yes, I mean, the central sort of text that people, Hindus refer to is the Bhagavad Gita, because it's considered to be the essence of Hindu philosophy, sort of all rolled into one, because we've got a vast range of Vedas and Upanishads, and if you go start reading it, you'll get very confused and all of that. So it's very nice that we've got the Bhagavad Gita, which is like a condensed version of the Vedas and Upanishads, and within that you've got all the sort of key Hindu teachings about pluralism, different ways of approaching God, different temperaments of people. It goes into such a vast variety of detail about Hinduism that it helps us to sort of put it into practice into our everyday lives. So every Hindu home has a Bhagavad Gita, but not every Hindu home has all the Vedas and Upanishads.
Amazing. So Manish Bhai, the next question for you is, in Hinduism, there's lots of symbolism. One of the symbols that you can spot a Hindu is a red mark on the forehead or some mark on the forehead, what we call a tilak in Sanskrit. So what is the significance of it, and why do Hindus wear that dot in the middle of their forehead?
Right. In yoga philosophy, we say there is Agna Chakra here, which is here between the forehead, and that's sort of eye of knowledge for as per yoga philosophy. So we mark that spot with bindi or a tilak to mark that spot.
Fabulous. So if you are somebody in the Western countries, do not be ashamed to wear the bindi or the tilak, on your forehead anywhere in the world. Be proud of it, and that dot is going to distinguish you from the other people as a very special person, a Hindu, a knower of eternal truths. Wonderful. Let's crack on with the next question, which is another interesting question that a lot of people, especially people who are new to Hinduism or Westerners, they ask this: are the gods of Hinduism really married? Sitaben, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we did discuss last time. And what we've said is that they're not sort of married in the normal way of a husband and wife, like us human beings. We say that they're essentially sort of counterparts of the same ultimate. So you recognize the male and female are both equally significant. And it reminds me of, for example, Krishna and Radha. And it's not meant to be a physical relationship. It's a platonic relationship. And it's almost like a metaphor for the human soul being drawn towards the ultimate reality. So by sort of, making it into a human form, we're able to sort of relate to it in a much better way. And I think the wonderful thing is that we don't just say, oh, male god, male god, male god. We've got such a vast variety of female deities as well. And we're one of the few religions in the world who recognize God as female. So we have to take pride in that and not sort of misunderstand it as being sort of females are considered subordinate or all of that.
We have so many interesting questions, a few more to go. So Manish bhai, in India, we've had this word caste and untouchability, right? And caste comes from the Portuguese word casta, which means clan or lineage. And in Hindu society, we've got two things. We've got varna, which is the four basic classes. And then we've got jati, which is, the many different professions you could have within those classes. And generally, people tend to stick within their jati. So like, they get married within that, and their friend circle is within that. They have certain common beliefs, etc., etc. Now with the advance of time, with the world becoming a global village, with education and things going on, that sort of thing is breaking down a little bit. But still, India has this sort of a little bit of a stigma about caste and untouchability. Would you mind discussing about that?
Sure. So Nisit bhai, as you said, there was in ancient time a description of Varna system, which divided people into four groups: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Depending on their attitude, they were doing the work. But it was not based on birth. It was based on what kind of your aptitude is, and you were given work. So those who were fighters were called Kshatriya. Those who were knowledgeable or like to study, they were Brahmins. And those who like trading were Vaishyas, and those who were in service industry were called Shudras. Unfortunately, this system degenerated, and it became hereditary. And then what we currently, what it degenerated into is a kind of a system whereby many different groups came into being, and the original idea was lost. But what we have to note here is no Hindu scriptures ever give any authority to this system. So, and all modern proponents of Hinduism, like Swami Vivekananda, Ramanujacharya, Swami Narayan, they all said this is not something that we should be subscribing to. But the way it happened is the society moved in groups, and they tended to stay in those groups. And that way it sort of became a rigid system, which with modern society progressing, what's happening is and they were basically groups of people doing similar jobs. So, the people, the priest people, they stayed together, the fighters, they were together, and that way there became many different groups. There were not 4 groups, but there were like 30, 40, hundreds of groups, and they're all in their own different groups. And because then they developed their own systems and their own customs, and they want to do it same thing.
I suppose they used to pass down the family secret,
like
father to son or something. It's tradition, so they wouldn't want to pass it outside.
Yes. And with modern time, what happened is now with education and all that, now people are not doing the jobs of their forefathers. So that system is no longer valid. The jobs and people, everyone's doing any jobs that they get. So it no longer is effective. And in modern cities, you see this clearly that it is no longer valid. But what happens is people tend to want to marry in their own group. So say if Gujarati person, they want to, it makes sense for them to marry a Gujarati person, because then it's simpler, they speak the same language, they eat similar kind of food. So it helps in that sense, but it is no longer rigid system. And we see intercaste marriage and all these things, the group marriages between different groups. So it is a system that is on the way out, and as we progress, it will die out its natural death.
Amazing. So Sitaben, one more question for you, which is, in the recent years, there's a vigorous debate that has arisen, and that is whether yoga is intrinsically a Hindu practice or a universal science. The word yoga has actually changed the meaning, has changed the practice as it went to the West. The original meaning from the word Sanskrit word yuj means the union of oneself with the universal self, or be one with God. But in the West, obviously, it is a set of asanas with a little bit of breathing techniques and maybe a little bit of meditation, and it's positioned as a way of helping you physically become a better person, by nourishing your body, making you physically active, cardiovascular kind of things. But here's the question: is yoga a Hindu practice itself?
Yes, I mean, it's intrinsically, that's the whole point of our spiritual journey, is the union of the soul with the ultimate. And yoga is sort of, in a way, sort of, again, been sort of misunderstood. A lot of people think that it's purely physical exercises, and you see all these church halls up and down the country full of yoga classes and gyms and all of that, but there is so much more to yoga than that, because yes, it is very important to have a physically fit and healthy body, because how are you going to be able to sit down to meditate for long periods of time? So the ultimate purpose is to sort of develop that sort of meditation to the state of becoming super aware and sort of becoming one-pointed and sort of merging with the spirit. So yes, physical health is very important, because if you're coughing and wheezing and you can't sit still for long periods of time, then that's no good. But you have to remember, it's so much more than just the physical side. There's the sort of mental side. And with the whole Raj Yoga system, you have a set of 10 mental disciplines that you have to master before you're even supposed to sit down to meditate. So yes, physical health, but then a whole array of Satya, Ahimsa, Asteya. So things like truth, non-violence, not accepting gifts, and not stealing. There's a whole vast variety, including probably the most difficult one these days, which is brahmacharya, celibacy. So you have to be completely celibate. It's a whole array of these, and it can take not just one lifetime, it can take multiple lifetimes to sort of continue on this particular path. But there is so much more to yoga than meets the eye.
Amazing. So Manish Bhai, one more for you. So Hindus readily accept the idea that it is not necessary, it's not even desirable, or even possible for everybody to hold the same beliefs. There is even a Sanskrit verse that summarizes the Hindu attitude, that, as different streams have their sources in different places and all mingle their waters into the sea. So, O Lord, the different paths that people take, all through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to God. right? So that is the Hindu attitude. It's very accepting. But the question is this: how do Hindus view other religions? Do they coexist peacefully, or are they going up for it?
Wonderful. So that example was given by Swami Vivekananda at World Parliament of Religion on 1893, September 11. And it is Sanskrit words, Akasat patitam toyam yatha gacchati sagaram sarvadeva namaskaram kesavam prati gacchati. So yes, we view different religions as different pathways to God. So we accept and acknowledge that they do take you to, there are different pathways to God, but we say you cannot say one pathway is better than the other. We are all different people. We have all different attitudes. And if we look at the idea of reincarnation, we are all at different levels of reincarnation. So the way we think about and relate to God depends on our geographical locations and our upbringing and many different factors. And we acknowledge that fact. And because of that, we say we have many different religions, different people discovered God in different way in their own, and they explain to their people in their language and culture. So that's why we have many different pathways, but we are happy and we accept all religions as a valid pathway to God. But we say the pathway that you are born into or that suits you, you should follow, and you should follow it through rather than changing religions.
Amazing. So with keeping with time, I'm going to cut things short and just have one last question for Sitaben, which is, why do Hindus cremate the dead?
Okay, so Hindus recognize that the body is just an outer garment, and the Bhagavad Gita also talks about that the body is not the be all and end all. We are so much more than the body. We are the spirit. So we have to sort of, in a way, discard the body. It's served its purpose, and it's of no longer any value to that particular soul who has passed away. So the best sort of way of dealing with that is, rather than sort of burying, we believe it's cremating, because let everything go back to nature. All of the sort of energies and all the sort of chemicals and materials that came to make that body, let them go back to nature and sort of, do, what they need to do and create another sort of body. So we recognize the cyclical nature of time in that way, and the body is no longer of any significance to that particular soul.
Also,
go on.
Sorry,
go on.
Nisibhai, just one thing to add on cremation is, when we cremate, if there is viruses and things in the body, they get destroyed. If you're burning it, you may be keeping them alive. So that helps with that sort of thing, where we saw in coronavirus times, there were cremation all over the place.
Fabulous. So folks, where has the time gone? We are already 57 minutes into the broadcast, and I need to bring it to a close. Thank you everybody so much for your contributions, your thoughts, your comments. We've been looking at the feedback over on YouTube. Sorry, I've not been able to answer as I was doing the Q&A session, but if your question hasn't been picked up, I will try and come back to it next week. So make sure you're here early so we can get started with your questions. From all of us here in this little Zoom room that we've got, I'd like to say goodbye and thank you again for being with us today, taking the time out of your busy day to join us. And many of you are regulars, so we appreciate you coming up every week and giving us some fantastic little questions and thoughts and nuggets that we don't otherwise think about. And as always, I'd like to end with a quote from Swami Vivekananda. Today's quote goes this: it's a little tiny, but the quote is big. All the power is within you. You can do anything and everything. So I hope that has empowered you, has given you a little bit of a right mindset to go ahead with your week. And we look forward to seeing you next week on Saturday, 2 o'clock as always.